Before you listen any further, do one thing. Make sure you are alone. Turn off the lights. Lower the volume around you. And if your phone vibrates while this story is playing, do not answer it. Some sounds are not meant to be returned. The first call came at exactly 2:30 in the morning. No ringtone. No vibration. Just sound. At first, I thought it was part of a dream. A faint noise, distant and soft, like air moving through a narrow space. I lay still in bed, half asleep, waiting for it to fade. It didn't. The sound grew clearer. Breathing. Slow and uneven, as if the person on the other end was struggling to pull air into their lungs. There was a wet quality to it that made my stomach tighten. Whoever it was, they were close to the microphone. Too close. I opened my eyes. My phone was glowing on the nightstand. Incoming call. Unknown number. I didn't answer. I didn't hang up. I just stared at the screen while the breathing continued. 5 seconds passed. Then 10. The sound never changed, never paused. Then the line went dead. I checked the call history. There was nothing there. No missed call. No record. As if it had never happened. I told myself it was a glitch. A cross signal. Some technical error that didn't matter. I rolled onto my side and waited for sleep to return. It didn't. I live alone, at the edge of a small town. My house is the last one before the forest begins. Behind my backyard, the trees stretch for miles. No streetlights. No marked trails. Just dense woodland that absorbs sound and light. The next day dragged on. Every noise in the house caught my attention. The refrigerator humming. The clock ticking. The floorboards creaking when I shifted my weight. That night, I locked the doors. I closed every window. I left the lights on. I placed my phone face down on the kitchen table and went to bed without it. At 2:30 a.m., I heard breathing. Not from the phone. From inside the room. I sat up instantly, my heart pounding. The sound was faint but unmistakable. Slow. Wet. Close. I held my breath, listening. The sound stopped. My phone rang from the kitchen. I didn't want to answer. Every instinct told me not to. But fear has a way of forcing your hand. I picked it up. The call connected immediately. This time, there was more than breathing. There were footsteps. Not inside my house. Somewhere else. Slow steps. Deliberate. Each one followed by the crunch of leaves and the snap of small branches. Whoever was walking wasn't rushing. They had time. Hello? I whispered. The breathing stopped. For a moment, I thought the call had ended. Then a voice spoke. It said my name. Not loudly. Not threateningly. Just calmly, as if this was a normal conversation between people who knew each other. The call disconnected. I didn't sleep after that. On the third night, I stayed awake on purpose. I sat on my bed with my phone in my hand, watching the minutes crawl forward. When the clock changed to 2:29, my chest felt tight. At exactly 2:30, the screen lit up. Unknown number. I answered immediately. Breathing. Footsteps. Silence. I spoke first. Where are you? The breathing slowed. Then the voice answered. Behind the trees. The call ended. I walked to the window and pulled the curtain aside. The forest stood perfectly still. No wind. No movement. Just dark shapes pressed together, blocking the moonlight. That was when I noticed something I had never seen before. A narrow path. It began at the edge of the trees and led straight toward my house. The leaves along it were freshly disturbed, as if someone had walked there recently. I stood there until sunrise, staring at the forest, knowing one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever had called me knew where I lived. And it was not finished. The path was gone the next morning. I checked before the sun was fully up, standing barefoot in the wet grass behind my house. The forest looked normal. Dense undergrowth, fallen branches, and tangled bushes where the opening had been. No disturbed leaves. No narrow line leading to my back door. For a moment, Relief hit me so hard I almost laughed. I told myself I had imagined it. That fear had drawn a straight line through chaos and called it a path. Then I noticed the ground near the steps. The grass was pressed flat in a long oval, as if someone had stood there for a while. Not walked through. Stood. Facing the trees. I stared at it until my eyes watered. Inside, I tried to act normal. I cleaned the kitchen twice. I folded laundry I did not need. I turned the television on for noise, then muted it because the voices felt wrong. Every few minutes I checked the time without meaning to. When evening came, I made a decision. If the call came again, I would not answer. I would leave the phone in the kitchen and let it ring until it stopped. I would prove to myself that I still had control. At 2:29 a.m., I sat at the table with the phone in front of me and my hands wrapped around a cold mug. The house was silent except for the clock. At 2:30, the lights flickered once. The phone did not ring. Breathing filled the room instead, low and wet, coming from somewhere near the hallway. I froze, listening. A soft scrape followed, like something shifting its weight on wood. Then the breathing stopped, as if whatever it was had noticed that I noticed. My phone lit up. Unknown number. I did not touch it. The screen went dark again. My phone vibrated a second time. Not a call. A notification sound, quiet but clear. A message. Look outside. My throat tightened. I stared at the words until the screen dimmed, then lit again with the same message, as if it insisted. I stood, moving slowly, and walked to the window without turning my back on the hallway. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear anything else. I pulled the curtain aside. The forest was darker than it should have been. The moon was out, but the trees swallowed its light. And there, between the trunks, the path had returned. It was narrower than before, like a thin cut in the undergrowth. The leaves along its edges looked freshly pushed aside, still bent, still shiny with torn stems. It led straight to my back door. My phone vibrated again. Come closer. I backed away from the window. Another vibration. You heard me. The words made my stomach drop. The first call. The breathing. My name. It was not random. It was not a glitch. It was aimed. I typed with shaking fingers. Who is this? The reply came instantly. The house. I stared at the screen, confused in a way that felt almost physical. There is no house, I typed. Just forest. The reply was slower this time, like it was choosing the wording. There was. Now there is you. A cold wave moved through my chest. I tried to tell myself it was nonsense, that a message was just text on a screen. But the air in the room felt heavier, as if pressure had changed. From the hallway came a single footstep. Not outside. Inside my house. My phone vibrated again. Do not turn on more lights. I did not know why, but I obeyed. My hand hovered near the switch anyway. The need to flood the room with brightness was overwhelming. But something in that message felt like a warning, not a threat. Like the light would make it easier for something to see. Another footstep sounded, closer now, slow and measured. I stepped backward until my shoulders touched the wall. My phone vibrated. Walk. I shook my head. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. The next message arrived. You already started. My body moved before my mind agreed. I took a step toward the hallway. Then another. My legs felt wrong, like they were being guided by a thought that was not mine. At the end of the hallway, the front door stood slightly open. I was sure I had locked it. My phone vibrated once more. Outside is quieter. I reached for the handle. The air near the door was colder, thick with the smell of wet leaves. I pulled it open. The night was silent. No insects. No distant engines. Nothing. Across the yard, the forest waited, and the path looked wider than before, as if it had been used. My phone buzzed. Follow it. I stood on the porch, shaking, feeling the pull of the trees like gravity. I tried to do something normal, something practical. I lifted the phone and dialed the emergency number. My thumb hovered over the call button. No signal. I turned on airplane mode, off again. Nothing. The bars were gone as if the forest had swallowed them too. I stepped back inside and slammed the door shut. The lock clicked, but the sound felt meaningless. My phone vibrated again. You can close a door. Not away. I backed away from the screen. Then, very softly, I heard a sound from the kitchen. A chair sliding a few centimeters across the floor. The same scrape I had heard in the hallway earlier, like someone adjusting their stance. I forced myself to look. The kitchen was empty. The chair was where it always was. Yet the air smelled different now, like damp soil and old wood. My phone buzzed again. Listen. I held my breath. From deep in the woods, beyond my backyard, came the breathing again. Slow and wet, rising and falling as if the forest itself had lungs. Not through the phone. Through the dark. I did not sleep after that. I stayed on the couch with every light I had left switched on, listening to the house settle. The pipes clicked. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere in the walls, wood shifted with tiny pops, like distant knuckles cracking. Every normal sound felt staged, as if the building was trying to imitate safety. At 2:12 a.m. my phone vibrated again. No more doors. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. My hands were damp. I wiped them on my jeans, then checked the locks anyway. Front door. Back door. Windows. Everything was closed. Everything was still. At 2:29 a.m. the path outside was visible even from the living room window. I had not moved the curtain. I had not turned my head. I just knew it was there, like a pressure in my skull telling me where to look. At 2:30 a.m. the lights went out. Not a flicker. Off. The television died. The clock face went dark. The hum of the refrigerator stopped. Silence rushed in so fast it felt like a physical blow. My phone remained lit in my hands. Walk, it said. I should have thrown the phone. I should have smashed it. But my fingers tightened around it like it was the only thing anchoring me. From the hallway came a slow footstep. Then another. Then the wet breathing, close enough that I could almost feel it on my cheek. I stood without deciding to stand. My knees locked. My feet carried me forward. The front door was open again. Cold air rolled in, smelling of damp leaves and soil. My phone vibrated. Outside. I stepped onto the porch. The town was gone. That is the only way I can describe it. The houses across the street were still there, but they looked wrong, like flat shapes cut from cardboard. No lights in any windows. No sounds of other people. No dogs. No cars. Only the forest behind my house looked real. The path waited, wide and dark, leading between the trees. My phone vibrated again. Do not speak. I moved down the steps and onto the grass. The ground felt spongy, as if it had rained, but the air was dry. Each step made a soft sucking sound. I hated it. I hated how loud it was. The moment I reached the edge of the trees, the path tightened into a narrow corridor. Branches leaned inward, forming a roof. The moonlight vanished. I walked. The breathing stayed with me. Not always behind me. Sometimes beside me. Sometimes ahead, as if something was guiding me by sound alone. After a few minutes, the phone buzzed with a new message. You hear them now. I stopped. At first, I heard nothing. Then I recognized the rhythm. Footsteps, far away, moving through leaves in the same measured pace I had heard on the calls. Not one set. Many. Dozens. All matched, as if an invisible conductor kept time. I wanted to run, but my legs did not respond. My body felt borrowed. A message appeared. Keep going. The path opened suddenly into a clearing. And there it was. A cabin. It was smaller than I expected, but the darkness around it made it feel massive. The wood was stained nearly black. The windows were not broken, not boarded, just empty holes swallowing the night. The door was open. Breathing poured out like fog. My phone vibrated again. Inside. I shook my head, but the motion felt weak, like I was refusing a suggestion rather than an order. My phone buzzed. You already entered. A memory flashed through me, sharp and impossible. A hand on that same doorframe. The smell of old wood. A step over a threshold. A voice whispering my name with the wrong mouth. I swayed. The footsteps in the forest drew closer. The circle behind me tightened. I could sense bodies between the trees, standing still, waiting. My phone vibrated. Choose quietly. I did not understand. Then the cabin door creaked wider. A shape moved in the darkness. Tall. Too still. Its outline looked like a person wearing a person, the edges not fitting right. It stepped into the doorway without making a sound. The pale place where a face should have been turned toward me. And I realized the breathing was not coming from it. It was coming from inside the cabin. From many throats. My phone buzzed once more. One stays. One leaves. I took a step back. The trees behind me were no longer trees. They were silhouettes with shoulders, with heads, with patient hands hanging at their sides. A whisper brushed my ear. Not from the phone. Not from the cabin. From right behind me. It sounded like my own voice. Don't turn around. My stomach dropped. My phone lit up with a final message. If you look, you remember. The pale figure did not move. It only watched, as if waiting for me to make the decision that mattered. My fingers cramped around the phone. I could not feel my hands anymore. I could barely feel the ground under my feet. Somewhere to my left, a branch snapped. Not an accident. A signal. The shapes in the trees shifted closer in perfect silence. The air smelled like wet soil and something older, like a basement that had been sealed for years. My phone vibrated gently, almost kindly. Last chance to walk away. I stared at the words until they blurred, and I realized I could not tell whether they were warning me, or tempting me. I stood at the edge of the clearing, frozen, with the cabin waiting, the forest holding its breath, and the path behind me closing like a wound. And then, against every instinct I had left, I turned. I turned. The forest behind me was no longer empty. Shapes stood between the trees, half hidden by shadow, half formed by it. They did not move. They did not breathe. They simply occupied space where space should not have been. Some were tall and narrow, others hunched and uneven, as if their bodies had been assembled without a clear plan. All of them were facing me. I understood then that they had never been following me. They had been waiting. My phone vibrated again. Do not speak. The pale figure in the doorway shifted slightly. Not closer. Not farther away. Just enough to remind me that it was still there. Still watching. Still patient. The breathing from inside the cabin grew louder, layered and overlapping, like several people trying to inhale through the same narrow space. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my throat. I took a step back. The ground behind me felt wrong, soft and unstable, as if the forest floor was no longer solid but something that could give way at any moment. Another vibration. One stays. The words appeared slowly, as if the phone wanted me to read them carefully. One leaves. I shook my head. I didn't agree to this, I whispered, even though I had been told not to speak. The forest reacted immediately. The shapes leaned forward in unison. The breathing stopped. For a moment, there was absolute silence. Then the voice spoke again, not through the phone this time, but from everywhere around me. You already did. The memory hit me all at once. Not a dream. Not imagination. A different night. The same forest. The same cabin. I remembered standing in the doorway years ago, younger, curious, stupid. I remembered following a sound that didn't belong. I remembered stepping inside, believing I was alone. I remembered promising something I didn't understand. The pale figure raised one long arm and pointed into the cabin. Inside, the darkness shifted. Something moved forward. And then I saw him. Me. Not a reflection. Not a shadow. A person. Same face. Same body. Same fear. His eyes were wide, his mouth slightly open as if he had been trying to scream but no sound would come out. He looked at me like I was the answer to a question he had been asking for a very long time. I didn't know, he said. His voice shook. I didn't know what they meant. I couldn't breathe. How long have you been here? I asked. He swallowed. I don't know. Time doesn't work right. Nights repeat. The calls repeat. I hear you breathe when you sleep. My stomach twisted. The shapes in the forest began to whisper. Not words. Sounds. Fragments of voices layered on top of each other, rising and falling like wind through broken windows. My phone vibrated. Balance must be kept. The other me took a step toward the doorway, then stopped. They told me the same thing, he said quietly. That one stays. That one leaves. I thought I could cheat it. I thought I could listen without answering. He shook his head slowly. You can't. The pale figure lowered its arm. The cabin door began to close on its own, inch by inch, wood groaning softly. The whispers grew louder. I understood then that the choice had never been about bravery or morality. It was about memory. Someone had to remember the forest. Someone had to answer the calls. Someone had to listen. My phone buzzed again, gently this time. Walk away. I looked at the other me. He smiled, just slightly. Not relieved. Not angry. Just tired. Don't stay too long, he said. It gets harder to tell which thoughts are yours. The cabin door slammed shut. The sound echoed through the clearing like a gunshot. The forest went silent. The shapes vanished as if they had never been there. I was alone. The path behind me opened again, wide and clear, leading back toward my house. I ran. I did not look back. I did not listen. I don't remember getting home. I remember locking the door. Sitting on the floor. Breathing until it hurt. The next morning, the forest was normal. No path. No cabin. No disturbed ground. Weeks passed. Then months. The call stopped. No breathing. No footsteps. No messages. I moved away. Different town. Different apartment. No forest nearby. I sleep with noise now. Fans. Music. Anything to keep silence from settling. For a long time, it worked. Tonight, my phone vibrated for the first time in years. No number. No name. Just sound. Breathing. Slow. Wet. Too close. I didn't answer. The voice spoke anyway. It's time to trade places. The line went dead. A message appeared seconds later. Someone new is listening now. I looked at the time. 2:30 a.m. Thank you for listening. If your phone feels heavier than usual after this, don't check it. If you hear breathing when there shouldn't be any, don't answer. Some paths disappear in daylight. Others only appear once you've been chosen.